So in this video I'm going to be looking at creating some simple AI. We're going to create a new blueprint type character. I'm going to call this BP underscore parent underscore enemy. So now we've got an enemy parent. We'll open that up and we will give it a static mesh. Call this tank body. And is the tank body tank hull? Yeah, there we go. If I compile that, we can mess around with these colours in a little bit. But for now, let's just get this set up. We want to grab the capsule component. And we're going to want to mess with this a little bit so that it fits the tank a little better. Maybe a touch more. Something like that feels fair. Okay, so we want to go into the tank body and we want no collision on the tank body. And for the capsule, we want to go into custom and we want to make sure that any enemy projectile is set to ignore so that the enemies can't shoot each other. I believe that's everything. Yeah, looks like everything in collision there. Okay, so we want to find a way of letting this see the player, and probably the quickest way is sphere collision. Yeah, sphere, and come up here, we'll increase the radius, something like 1,000 or 100. Just give it a good vision around it for it to chase the player. And inside this, we want to go to the collision again. Set this to custom. We want to set on detection. We want to ignore everything and overlap pawn. Compile and save that. Okay, so just for a quick test of this now, get rid of this. We want that sphere, and on begin overlap, we'll cast to player character. We'll promote this to a variable. Ref underscore player, and then we're just going to print a string. Player detected kill. Compile, save. And we'll just come over here where we've got some space, because this is very quickly turning into my sandbox before I build something properly. So put the enemy over here and test. And it doesn't seem to have recognised the player for some reason. That is strange. into the player character. Close the player character, of course I have. And let's have a look at your capsule. Oh, well that's right, we need overlap on detection there. Save that. And this time this should work. There we go. Player detected kill up in the top left there. Awesome stuff. Okay, so jumping back over to the blueprint we're working on. The enemy parent, there we are. We don't need this anymore because we know that that's working. I'm going to add a custom event. And this will be init movement. And from here we're going to do a set timer by event. And we'll have a variable here. Movement update time, and we will want this looping. Then I'm going to want another custom event for move. Plug that into the event here. We're going to want to promote this to a variable. This is going to be the movement timer. And just to see this working, we'll print string again. I'm moving. And then we're going to init movement off here. And then we want to take that sphere again, and we want on end overlap. Get the movement timer. We want clear and invalidate. Just plug that in there. Good stuff. So yeah, now when we overlap, we'll be running this move logic, and when we end overlap, we'll be clearing that timer by handle. And we'll just do a quick test to make sure that works, and then we'll carry on. There's something I've missed somewhere. There is a timer of 0 here. So 0.1 for now. We'll mess about with that timer in a minute. We'll test again. And there we go. Every 0.1 seconds it's streaming I'm moving, and when we move away it starts to clear those messages, and that'll clear and fill when we move in and out of that area. That's good. Okay, realistically I can leave this in here because this is the parent, and it'll show that there's no movement logic set up when we turn this into a child if it's streaming and moving down the screen. So I'm going to come out here now and make a child of that enemy. And if I get rid of this one here and open up the child, I'll throw the child there, and open up the event graph, and we should be able to search for move, event move. There we go, event move. And then from event move, if we print string here, child tank, and we can test this again. And that'll stream child tank down the side of the screen. Back into there. Get rid of this print string. So from event move, I'm going to go AI move to, and we're going to go a reference to self for the pawn to control. And the target actor will plug in the player reference. Nice. Acceptance radius maybe 50, so they're not right on top of the player, but we'll check that out anyway. Stop on overlap. No, we don't want them to like overlap ideally, so they'll move out of the way, hopefully. Yeah, we'll see how that works. Compile and save that. For some reason everything's going a bit laggy for me. What's going on with that? Have I got the yeah, parent enemy? Is this set too high? Set that to 1. Yeah, that's a bit better. But for some reason it's not picking the player up again now. Ah, of course. Nothing's going to work without a nav bounds mesh. Need a navigable mesh. Nav mesh bounds volume, that's the one. We'll set this to 0. Won't quite have it at 0, we'll move to between the two areas. Let's just grow this out over it. Okay, now this should work. It wasn't able to chase me because it didn't know where the floor was. So I can hit P to stop showing that. And let's see if the child can chase the player. It can indeed. With increasing its radius there, it's a little bit short-sighted. Let's go to the parent, get the sphere, sphere radius maybe 2000 or 1500, just up the size of that a little. And then, yeah, we've got the child that'll move towards the player. Let's see how that works now. Much better. Can't do any damage to it yet, but it's a start. Just get rid of this up the corner. So I'm going hop back into the child enemy. And this acceptance radius, I'm going to make that more like 200. Test again. Hang on, I actually won't compile that yet. Test again. And now it stops a short distance away from us. Maybe worth making that 300. Yeah, that's a bit better. So this will move right in on us now. So if we jump back over to the parent enemy now, we want a attack timer. So if we add a custom event, we'll go init attack timer. Then we're going to do timer by event. And give this attack speed. So promote this to a variable. Attack speed. For some reason my UI got a bit stuck there. Right, so let's pull this over this way a bit. Want to promote this to a variable. And this is going to be the attack timer. And we want that to loop. And then if we add another custom event, call this attack, and then connect the event up there, and we've got the attack logic. So now if we come in here and comment some of this, detect player, move, and attack. Okay, now we can compile and save this, jump back over to the child enemy and hit save on here. Oh no, before we go into the child we won't go back into the parent because we want to add an arrow component to shoot from. So the capsule, arrow, and we want to move this up here. And then we can use this to shoot from. Okay, so let's jump back into the event graph here, and after init movement we're going to also init attack timer. Compile and save that, and now we can build the attack logic into the child enemy. Okay, just over in the parent, just so that it's easier to identify this in the future. We're going to call this arrow underscore firing point. We'll compile and save that, and jump back over into the child, and now we can call event attack that we've just created in the parent, and we will spawn actor of class, and it will be the enemy projectile. And then we want to split the transform. We want to get the firing point and take the world location, and get the world rotation. And plug those into the pins up here. Just tidy this up a bit. No, that should be it. That should be everything that we need this to do for now. So let's just compile and save. We'll give that a quick test. Nope, that doesn't work yet. Let's just see if we ever reach this. F9. So it never actually starts firing. Let's jump back into the parent. Initialize attack timer. Attack speed is 0, that's Y. 0.3. Compile, save, that should fix it. Yeah, there we go. Now it's shooting arrows. We need to mess around with the projectiles and increase the speed for them, but that is a good chaser enemy. So if I save this, we'll close the child for a moment, and just going to rename this to chaser enemy, because I can add a few extra things to this now. I might add a few variables inside them, inside the parent, to handle which projectile it fires, just so that it's easy to switch out in a drop menu, just so that I can customize a few of these a little bit more rapidly. But for now, there is a basic enemy, and I will do that and show the progress with that as I get to it. So now, if I jump back over into the parent, we'll set up the health logic, so we want to vent any damage. And we are going to want a couple of variables, so we're going to want max health as a float, and we want current health also as a float. And we want, have we got death as a, no, we haven't got death as logic here yet, so we want custom event, call it death, bin that down here, because probably best to have that at the bottom. We'll just create a boolean is dead. Then we can throw a branch in. No, nor of death. We'll get to that in a moment, so we want throw a branch in here. So is dead equals false. So just compile so we can set the default value for that. Default is not true. And then we're going to want to set the current health from false, and that'll be set using the current health minus the incoming damage. And then we're going to want to clamp these values between 0 and max health. And then that'll feed into setting the current health. And then we need to check if the current health is less than or equal to 0, and if it is, death. And again, for now, we'll just have death destroy the actor. Comment this, going to be damage logic, and then comment this down here, death. Nice. So if I expose the health variables, I should be able to edit those in the child. If I open that back up again, chaser enemy. Yeah, max health and current health, and if I set those in the parent enemy, just move that over so I'm working side by side. So in the parent enemy, set the max health maybe to 30 for these, and the current health at 30 as well. Compile and save that, and that should carry over to these. Yeah, there, perfect. So now I should be able to kill them. We get the Tesla. It appears not. So that's going to likely be something to do with collision. Let's just have a quick look in there again. So damage logic, event any damage, death, destroy actor. The health is equal to or less than 0, then death. And we want to set is dead true here. So the logic looks correct to me, so that says to me it's something to do with collision. So if we go up to the capsule component now. Yep, block player projectiles, so that should be working. Maybe it's just that Tesla weapon that was giving us jip. Let's have a look. Use this fast firing weapon, this should be able to kill it quite quick. Am I just missing? Is that the problem? Does the capsule need to be higher? Go to viewport. No, that should be colliding, surely. Ignore enemy projectile. Block. Yeah, block player projectile. Yeah, that's very strange. Okay, so let's go back into the player character. Not the player character, the parent enemy. Into the event graph. If we're not dead, we're setting the current health by depleting the current health with the damage, clamping between 0 and the max health value, and setting it. Yeah. And then we're checking if it's less than or equal to 0, and if it is, death. So let's just print string. Whenever that changes. For now. Let's see if we're actually hurting it. Not actually doing any damage to it. It's like we're just passing through the capsule. Is the capsule not moving with it? Is it not the route? Object type enemy. Maybe that's what's doing it. There we go. That's what it was. It was the collision settings. We didn't have it tagged as an enemy. So now we can shoot and kill that. And that's a basic chaser enemy. So yeah, I will get on with building more of those. A few more enemies. So I've created a few more children from the BP parent enemy. A couple of different mechanics with these now. We've got the chaser enemy that moves towards the player with an acceptance of, I think, around 400, but I'll double check that in a moment. And just repeatedly fires we've got the approach enemy that finds a random point in a radius around the player character and stops there. And again, this is firing repeatedly, but if I was to give this a gun that could rotate towards the player, or the ability for the tank itself to rotate towards a player, that would be quite a useful AI, and I might keep hold of the code for this when I actually turn this into a wave defense. We've got the basic bomber with a landmine on the top, and when the player moves near this, it'll drive towards the player at quite a high speed and detonate and blow itself up, dealing damage to anything near it. That's only a small damage value for this one because it's quite fast and it doesn't have a lot of health, so if the player is able to react, they can shoot this one. And then we've got the slow bomber, which is the big bomber. This is the big nasty one. This one is quite slow, but it does a huge chunk of damage to the player if this gets near. So to go through the logic for these, the approach enemy for event move is still using the AI move 2 and using itself for the pawn, and we're using the reference for the player and getting the capsule component, getting the world location, and we're getting a random reachable point in radius with a radius of 600, an acceptance radius of 400, which gives us anything from 400 to 600 that the AI can stop in to hold a circle around the player character. I've then taken the movement update time, there we are, and I've set this to 5 so that it does this every 5 seconds, so that it'll find a point, and again, when I set the gun up to rotate towards the character, it'll start firing, and it'll move, and it'll continue firing as it does so, but it'll continue to hold advantageous positions. The attack is much the same as the chaser enemy, which I'll jump over to now, which is just spawning the projectile using the firing point, location and rotation as the transform. The chase enemy is using AI move 2, referencing itself, and the target actor is the player, with an acceptance radius of 300, so it'll stop 300 units away from the player. I might actually up that to 400, I think that'll be a little bit better for this enemy. We'll save that. We've got the bomber enemy. So the bomber enemy, again, moves to the player, but the acceptance radius is 100. We want them just speed right up on the player. For this, we've got an extra sphere collision on the little tank, and on overlap with this sphere, we apply damage for 30 with this one, and then we spawn system at location, and oh, of course I better open that Niagara system to show that. So I created a Niagara particle system using emitters, the directional burst, just a couple of different colours. I upped the scale and I altered the colour to make it emissive, and I angled the burst upwards so that again I sort of spread with the particles. So that's that. So we spawn that Niagara system using the capsule components, location and rotation, and then call the death event, which is just currently destroy the actor. So I will show... Oh no, I'll jump over to the slow bomber. So the difference between the child and the slow bomber. They've both got the same 100 acceptance radius. The child bomber has a base damage of 30, whereas the slow bomber has a damage of 60. The child bomber has a max health and a current health value of 10, where the slow bomber has a max and current health of 50. And the child bomber, I believe, has a movement speed of 600. Yeah, max walk speed 600 there. And for the slow bomber, it's a max walk speed of 100, but that seemed quite slow. So I'm going to try this at 200, and we'll see what that plays out like when I run through the test in a moment. So we'll compile and save this. Okay, so we've got the machine gun, and we'll go test these. We've got the chase enemy. Chase us down. And continue firing. Got this one that will find a random point in range of the player, and it'll stop there. Go and do it again. Do we just need to kill you? Just kill this one. So that'll find locations around the player and move there repeatedly. This is the bomber, so this will chase us, and when it gets close, it'll explode and deal damage. Just go use the healing. Yeah, use the healing zone so we can show how much damage the other one does in comparison. And then we've got the slow bomber, and we'll see how fast this actually is now. Yeah, I feel like that's good, because that'll be annoying with that chasing you around. I might even put its health higher. I'll let that kill us. That's a lot of damage. Yeah, I like that. So let's just test one more time. We'll take the shotgun. We'll see how much damage it takes to actually kill this one down here. So it's a couple of shots really, unless you're like majorly accurate. That's yeah, that's cool. That's I believe 4 different enemies. I've tidied up the blueprints folder as well, because it was starting to get a little bit chaotic in here. So I've structured it into an AI folder, an environment folder, projectiles and weapons. So yeah, that's 4 different AI enemies, and they're only simple AI enemies, but they're functional. They do what I intend them to do. And we'll move on to the next part. So I've created a child of the chaser enemy child, and this one I'm going to be doing random fire. That's quite simple setup. We just come into the event graph, and all the logic will be the same as the chaser enemy, but we're going to pull up the event attack. And then we're going to spawn actor of class, and split this transform. And then we want to get the firing point, we want the world location. I'm going to use that for the location. And then we're going to split the rotation. Just straighten all this up. And in the rotation, we're going to get a random rotator. And we're going to split this. And we just want the yaw. We're going to get random in there. And that should, in theory, fire in... Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I haven't set a class. Enemy projectile. So now this will spawn the projectiles in random directions when it fires. We'll just test that. So for now I'm just going to move these back this way. And we'll throw one of these random fire enemies in. And we'll hit play. Now it fires in random directions. Which is good. But we want it to shoot at the player as well. So we're going to take another child of this chaser enemy. And this will be player aim enemy, just so I know where it is. We'll go into the random fire as well, and we will just change one of the colours on this so that it looks different to the others. Okay, so that's the random fire, and then we've got the player aim. We'll just do the colour on this quickly while we're here. So let's just go steel all across on this one. No, we want something breaked up. What about the yellow on there? That's different to the others. So, over into the event graph. So, we're going to get rid of these again. And we're going to go event attack. And we want to spawn actor from class. And the class is going to be enemy projectile. Straighten these up. Split the transform. Right, so this time we're going to be taking the firing point. And we're going to get the world location. And straighten those. And then we're going to want the player reference. We want to get the actor location. And we're going to want to do find lookout rotation from here, with the player as the target. And that will be the transform rotation. Spawn transform location is going to come from the arrow's firing point. Just straighten that up over here. Yeah, so the location from the firing point and then the lookout rotation is using the firing point as the start point, and then the player's actor location as the target. And we'll compile and save that, and we'll test that now. So the aim at player enemy is on the right. and that is chasing the player and shooting at the player. Nice. Now, something that is demonstrated as part of the guidance is, if we drag this over here, we can ensure that we've got that the player is a valid reference by just searching is valid. Oh, not that one. It's the one with the question mark. And we can plug the player into there, and if it's valid, if the player is a valid target, we can plug it into our enemy projectile and compile and save that, and this will do exactly the same thing. It'll still chase and attack. We'll just come over and make sure that is still the case. Yep, so we're still a valid target because we are alive. So now if we jump back into here, there is another way that we could do that. We could bring in, well, we could use this player reference and we could convert it to a validated get. And then rather than using the is valid up here, we plug that in there and plug that in there from is valid, so we're doing that same thing just in one node. And we can pull these over here and straighten this up, and this will work exactly the same, and it's just a little bit cleaner. So I'll compile and save that, and again we'll just ensure that that works. We're alive, so we are valid, we exist still. And it's still firing because we do still exist in the world. So yeah, that works. Good stuff. So now with that done, I'm going to open all these children up and I'm going to delete the gun from them because I'm going to add that to the parent. I'm literally going through each one of these and just deleting the, well, it's a mine on this one, but the gun attachment. The reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a function to the parent with that gun already, so that it's capable of aiming at the player, and then I'll be able to modify those parts for each of the children. So I'll jump through doing that and pick back up when I'm actually building the code in the parent. Okay, so I've used a couple of static meshes, the mine and the barrel, and I've set them up as a turret mount and a gun, and I've attached the firing point to the gun. So now when we move the turret mount, we'll be moving both the gun and the firing point, and this is on the parent enemy. So now I'll jump over into the event graph, and we're going to want some look at logic. So if I move damage and death together, we'll just move those down to give us some space. So now we're going to want another custom event. And this is going to be aim at player, and we're going to get the player reference and make this a validated get. So out of this we're going to be setting the world rotation, of the turret mount we're looking for. there. And then we're going to use the turret mount and get the world location. And we want the actor location, get actor location for the player character, and we're going to want to do the find look at rotation with the player character as the target. And we'll split the oh no, we don't actually need to do that. We can just use that rotation, that'll be fine. It's only really going to cause a problem if the player's above, but no, I'm going to split this because we only want this to rotate on the Z axis. Yeah. Yeah, so that should work, and we're just going to do that on tick. Bring that down here. Just give it a bit more room in case we do add anything else to the tick, but it's unlikely that we will. We'll comment that this is going to be look at logic. Or maybe it'd be better aim logic. Make that black with the rest of it. Yeah, so that should function. We'll test that now. And in theory that should just work with the chaser enemy for how we've adapted it. So let's see. Oh, well, that didn't work for some reason. They're just deleting themselves now. Oh, I know why they're deleting themselves, because I am very, very silly. We need to go into the viewport. So the turret mount, the collision is going to be custom. This is exactly why they're deleting themselves. They're shooting themselves. Enemy object type. Ignore enemy projectiles. The rest should be good. And we need to do the same for the gun. Custom. Enemy. Ignore enemy projectiles. And the rest should be good. Let's just try that again when we're not being foolish. Yeah, nice. Increase the fire rate and that'll be a little bit more deadly. Okay. The other thing is to rotate the body of the tank towards the player now. And I could rebuild this, but the guidance actually guides me to copy it from the player character. But as you can see, I have been experimenting with the movement and the player character here building a lot of this. My goal was to cause the hull of the tank to tilt with movement, just to add a little bit of game feel, some juice. But I wasn't quite able to get it work, and I was wasting quite a bit of time on there, and ultimately I'm considering using a scene component for the movement and simulating physics, and then have the scene component calculate a distance out from itself using a line trace, and use that to cause the tank to hover. And I feel like that'll just feel a bit nicer to glide around the map. It'll be more fun to play. But yeah, back to the task at hand. We're going to take hull to face here, and we're going to jump into the parent enemy and paste it in here. And the body mesh we're going to have to swap for the tank body, like that. And all of that seems to be connected. We'll see if that works. Yeah, I feel like that should do the trick, but we'll see. So this is going to be rotate toward player. Take 2. It's only doing it on the Z axis. So I think that's right. We will double check it in a moment when we test. We just want to call it on tick. We'll give that a go now. There we go. Yeah, it's a little bit snappy, but I think that's because it's being driven by tick. But no, I quite like that. There is something we can try to fix that. Where were we? The parent enemy. So if we go to the tank body, change this to absolute rotation, maybe that'll look a little bit cleaner. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that was overriding the hull to face. But that's done it. Good stuff. So, now that I've reached this point, I think what I'm going to do is completely ignore what we've done before, because this is all experimentation anyway, and I'm going to create 3 more children of the parent enemy, and create 3 unique tanks, because they will actually be really useful when we create the wave defense. That's a good start, having 3 different enemies that we can spawn in straight away. So I've made quite a few changes to the project. All of the AI created previously I've selected and put into a weekly tasks folder inside the AI folder, because I wanted to build fresh AI with the mechanics that I'll be using when I turn this into a game after the tasks. My intention is to build a wave defense shooter, so multiple enemies spawn, you kill the wave. I'll be thinking of adding a roguelite element, something similar to Vampire Survivor, where the player will be offered a couple of upgrade options, either damage increase or health increase, something along those lines, and then they move on to the next wave and kill more enemies. So because of this, I need, ideally on spawn, the enemies to move straight towards the player and attack in different behaviours. So what I'll do is I'll go through each of the enemies. I won't talk during the gameplay because I've added sound effects, so you'll be able to hear the sound effects at play and everything else. And then we'll go into each one of these actors that's being created, and I'll explain how it works and the changes that I've made. Okay, so first we have the light swarmer enemy. Now we have the heavy swarmer enemy. We have the fast bomber enemy. And the fast bomber has low health, so we can shoot it. We have the heavy bomber enemy. It's slow but does quite a lot more damage. And again, as with the fast bomber, we're able to kill this. And the idea of those is to just be something for the player to think about when fleeing enemies, like target priority. And then we have the erupter enemy, probably my favourite one so far. So now that we've explored how these behave in-engine, in-game, let's take a deeper dive into how the code works. So for the parent enemy, as I mentioned before, my intention is to turn this into a wave defense, and between waves I want to each wave that passes, I want all of the enemies to increase in power to create that difficulty curve. So on initialize, on begin play, we're casting to the player character to get the character reference, and then we're setting the max health variable using max health plus a health modifier, and we're doing the same for current health. In fact, I'm going to make it set current health to max health on begin play, because that makes sense. Then we're setting the max walk speed plus a modifier, and we're just calling the character movement up here to get that. And then we're initializing movement. An initialize movement is, as before, we have the movement update time that's driving a timer by event. We're setting a reference to that so that we can stop it if we do want to. And then we're calling move, and we've got the print string to tell us if that's not actually casting anything over to the child. Where are we now? So if we go to detect player, it's a requirement for these AI to detect the player, which they still do. Even though we're not moving upon detection, we're still using the attack timer and initializing that on detect player. And when we no longer detect the player, we're clearing and invalidating that timer by handle. I've added the attack logic to the parent enemy. My reasoning for this is that this logic is then hard coded in for the attack speed and everything, and if we want to do anything other than just spawn actor projectile, which I've promoted to a variable now so we can switch that easily along the children, we just call attack in whatever child it's in, and that'll override what's here. So this is just a default setting. The aim logic works as before for aim at player. We're using a validated get for the player reference. If not valid, I should probably add a bit of code for that. So if not valid, we're going to cast to BP underscore player character, and just get the player pawn. Just create ourselves a bit of space here. And we'll be setting this player reference again. Just to avoid any issues, I'll just move this over as well so it's a bit tighter. So this is just to avoid any issues when the player's respawning, because of course when the player dies and the actor's destroyed, this reference is no longer valid. So on tick, we're getting the we're calling aim at player, and if the player character is not valid, so for the time between spawning from death and the character being destroyed to respawning, it'll be firing not valid until it actually gets this value again. Although this isn't actually necessary because that's being called on move in each of the children, so we don't want to be bombarding it. That's actually not necessary. But I'll leave the space in case I decide to add it. So now we have a death function event that sets as dead. So we don't continue firing when don't continue taking damage when we're dead. we play a sound at location, at the actor's location, and this is an explosion that I downloaded, and I think I put it into Audacity and dropped the lowered the speed and pitch to just deepen the explosion a little bit. Yeah, and that's using a custom attenuation radius just set so that it's more realistic for an explosion. And then we're destroying the actor, and that just makes it easy to kill each of the children that we create from this, just when we need to. I'm not sure if we covered this, I feel like we did, but the halter face is exactly the same as in the player character. We've just copied it over and we're calling that on tick, so that we're calculating against velocity. And I believe that's all of the additions to the parent enemy. Now from there I created 3 children. We'll start with the ambush enemy. And this takes the move event, and we're getting a validated get for the player character, and this is why I've just deleted the code I created there. And if the player character is valid, we are going to move self to the destination of to a random reachable point in radius around the player character. This is currently set to 900, and on this particular enemy the movement update time is 1, so every second this finds a new point around the player character and moves to it. And this is the logic that drives the erupter. And the erupter as a child, what this does is very similar to the shotgun. It uses a sequence to spawn the projectile actor, and on each one of these it's just got a rotation offset from the firing point. So we've got like -20, 10, -10, 0, +10, +20 to create that cone, the firing cone that the erupter shoots in. Jumping back to the ambush enemy there. So if at any point the player character becomes not valid, so when it dies and the actor itself is actually destroyed to spawn a new player character, this will fire off not valid, which is firing off every time we move, which is every second, as I say, for this particular actor. And we're casting to the player character and just setting that variable again so that we're able to use it to locate ourselves. From here we'll jump over to, I'll just save this, jump over to the hunter enemy. So the hunter enemy is literally just moving towards the player character. We're still getting the validated get for the player character, and we're using that again on not valid to set the reference when the player dies. And we've got AI move to, we're moving ourselves to the target actor, which is the player reference. And we've got an acceptance radius on this of 400, which stops you just in front of the player character. But this is the logic that drives the fast and the heavy bomber. So if we go to the fast bomber, on event attack, I've just called that as an event so that we fire nothing here and we don't actually attack. And instead we've added an extra sphere collision onto the model, into the blueprint, sorry. And this sphere collision is explode collision. When you overlap with this, we just apply damage, we spawn a system at location and we're getting the capsule component, but could equally just get the actor location for self. But spawn system at location, and then we're calling death, which has the death sound built into it. but I believe we can change that. I think I promoted it to a variable. No, but that's something to think about. I could always expose that so we can have different death sounds on each one of these. It's always worth making these variables for making more AI. And again, so this is doing 30 damage with the fast bomber, and the character movement, we've got this set quite high. Max walk speed is 800, so it's quite quick moving towards the character. For the heavy bomber, this is a little bit slower. We've got this at 400, so it's quite slowly moving towards a player character, which gives them a chance to react to it. But that's because this does 60 damage, which 2 of those and the player's dead with a max health of 100 from the get-go. And again, this is just running the same logic: apply damage on overlap, spawn system at location, and run death because it destroys them. So jumping back to the hunter enemy. No, that's everything for the hunter enemy. So the orbit enemy, this one is a bit more complex. But it's nothing too crazy, it's just using a little bit of trigonometry. So on the event move for the orbit enemy, we are setting a variable for angle step. An angle step is using angular speed, which is the speed that we want to rotate in degrees, so 60 in this case, and the movement update time, so the time that drives event move. We're taking angle speed multiplied by update time to give us the angle step. Then we're checking if we want to move clockwise, true or false. Yep, so if false, we're taking the angular speed and just multiplying it by -1 to make it the same value but negative. Then we're setting the current angle in degrees, which is the current angle plus angle step, and then we're using division, whole and remainder, and this is basically to clamp it at 360 to give us a perfect circle. From there, we're setting an orbit offset, and this is where the trigonometry comes in. So we're using current angle in degrees with cos and sin, so cosine and sine, and we're multiplying each of those by the circle radius, and we're using that to make the x and y vector for the circle. So it's current angle in degrees with cosine multiplied by circle radius for x, and current angle in degrees with sine multiplied by circle radius to give us y. And circle radius I've got set at 800, so that's how big the circle's going to draw around the player character. Then we're using the validated get here, and this is where, if not valid, we're resetting if the player dies. And we're getting the actor's location, so the player character's location, plus the orbit offset, and setting that as a target location. And then we're using project point to navigation, just to ensure that this location that we're looking for, the target location, is within the nav mesh. If not, we're going to do nothing, and we're going to wait for the next tick of this to come through until this actually fires off true. And when it fires off true, then we're calling AI move to self, and we're using the output of this project point to navigation to set the destination, and the acceptance radius I've set to a variable with this, just so that we can have a little bit finer control over this to make sure that it orbits how we want it to do so. Something I'm considering doing though is early on in here, so angle step, angular speed, current angle in degrees, so probably at this point connecting into here, just adding a little bit of code. I might set the circle radius using a random random float in range, with a couple more variables for minimum circle radius and maximum circle radius, and just have it randomized between those, because the issue with a lot of enemies chasing one very specific point is that they bump into each other and they bunch up and get in each other's way. And while I could turn off collision so that they don't actually bump into each other, I feel like it'd be much nicer to just handle it by having them move around the player a little bit more scattered, a bit more randomly. I think that would make it more interesting. But that's to look into another time, I think. So we'll jump over to the swarmer enemies. The orbit enemy obviously being the logic that drives the swarm enemy. Open the full blueprint here. So for the light swarmer, this is literally just using the orbit enemy's logic, and it's already got firing built into it. So I've just give it a nice low health variable. If we find that down here, max health. So 10, so it's just nice and easy to kill them. A slow fire rate, and if I can find what am I looking for, the character movement, this is moving at 2000, so it's really fast to swarm around the player. I feel like I want to increase that further, but I want to test that with more of them after I've added the extra code, because I feel like they could be faster just to be a challenge to the player. So that's the light swarmer, and then we've got the heavy swarmer here. Again, using the exact same logic, but the heavy swarmer has a max health of 100, so it's harder to kill. And the movement is 1200. Now I feel like, as I was saying before, this could be pumped up quite a bit. Maybe have this at 2000 like what the light swarmer currently is, and then maybe double the light swarmer's speed just to make it that bit more interesting in gameplay. And with that, I believe that's the last one to talk about. Yep, that's the last one. Yeah, that is the third set of weekly tasks finished. I believe that's hit all the criteria. Create 3 more unique enemy child actors. Well, that's the parent. Well, the subclass from the base parent, and then we've got one at least from each one of those with the movements. They all do fire. They don't all fire distinct projectiles, but I've got an explosion, I've got a standard fire, and I've got the burst fire. Should have health and be destroyed when their health is gone. They've got different health values. All enemies shown should smoothly rotate using the hold to face technique. They do. Enemies that aim at the player should smoothly rotate their turrets. They do. Yeah, that's all of it, and I'm recording the video currently. Okay, I'll catch you in the next one then, guys. Thanks for joining me.